I'm about to show you the exact formula and system that took me from being a coach that hated sales, if I'm honest, sucked at sales, always felt like a fraud, desperate, pushy, sleazy, fill in the blank, maybe you resonate, to eventually getting my head around it and then putting a system in place that I'm going to show you that has been responsible for my personal business now doing over £10 million in sales, but more importantly, has been the reason that all of the coaches that I work with are now doing, tens of thousands of pounds in sales, despite being quite similar to me and not enjoying the sales process. And, through other methods that they tried, just feeling a bit pushy and it didn't really feel right. Whereas this system that I've put together, most of the feedback that we get is it just feels ethical. Like it just feels right. It just feels like you're in flow, that you're actually trying to help somebody. So if that sounds good, then let's jump into this. And I want you to, first off, this bit's really important, is I want you to think of a sales call almost as like a straight line going from left to right. So you can see it here, ending in this arrow over here. Now, the reason that I want to highlight this is obviously a sales call is ultimately a conversation. Whether this is over the phone, whether it's on Zoom, it's a conversation, and you're going to go through, little periods of the call where you go off track, and that is totally normal. So a typical sales call might start here, it might go like that, but ultimately we want to be trying to get back onto this sort of straight line. The reason I point this out is with some prospects that you get on calls with that perhaps have quite dominant personalities, or they're very extroverted and very social, it can be quite easy to allow them to completely take you off on huge tangents. So I just want to remind you to try and get back onto the straight line wherever possible. Side note, but if you're wondering like, how do I do that without cutting somebody off? Usually the most polite way to do it is just to listen, and then just go, sorry to interrupt 1 second. Can we just quickly rewind to this bit that you mentioned? I'm really interested in that. And then you just pull them back to the part of the call at which they'd gone off on a tangent. Getting back on track with this though. So there are 7 steps to this, and I want you to take either a photo of this or a mental snapshot or handwrite it down. These are the 7 things that we want to do in flow, and I'm going to break each one down one by one that make up a sales call. So the first, of course, is building rapport. I shouldn't really have to teach you much of this. It's just how to get onto a call and straight away just lower the barriers and just human to human, get on with them basically. The next phase is what we call why now, why me. This is really important for positioning. Then we move into the discovery phase, which ultimately is really the crux of any sales call. And if you've watched any sales trainings in the past, you no doubt have done a big amount of work around this. Then we move into model, which is something that most coaches overlook. They go straight to deliverables. I think the model is really important to do before the deliverables. Then we move into something called the temp check. And finally, we finish with obviously the investment phase. So one by one, I'm going to walk you through the 7 steps of this process, starting with rapport. Now, I'm not here to teach you to suck eggs. Building rapport with somebody should be something that comes across somewhat natural. As I said, whether it's a Zoom call, phone call, whatever, it should just be that 2, 3, 4 minutes of just like, oh, cool, we're on a similar wavelength here. So one thing I will say is try not to get carried away with this phase. Don't let people take you all around the houses, tell you their life stories, and turn this into something that should last like 15 minutes. It wants to be around 3 to 5 minutes long. A couple of things that I like to do during this phase is, of course, number one, the easiest is just sort of like run through how your week's been. So I'll tend to go like, oh, so remind me, what day is it today? Friday, damn. The week's gone quick, hey? And then they'll go, yeah, I know, tell me about it. And then you can go, how's the week been? Great, cool. So that's one option. The second option that I also like is, so remind me, which part of the UK are you from? And of course you can fill in the UK with US, Australia, whatever country they're in. Which part are you from? I'm from Manchester. Oh, cool. I was actually in Manchester last year. Yeah, I delivered like a little workshop, and I think I stayed at the Dakota Hotel. Oh yeah, I know the Dakota. Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? The restaurant in there was really good. One thing that the which part of the UK you're from, as your coaching business starts to grow, that can be quite powerful is actually just saying, we have a couple clients in that area. Like, do you know anybody that's working with me from Manchester? And then going down that route. So rapport, 3 to 5 minutes maximum. Next up, the positioning piece. So again, this should take 3 to 5 minutes. And this is why now, why me? So how we ask this one is, so listen, before we kick off, something I always love to ask is, why are we on this call today? So let's be honest, when it comes to getting in shape, to dropping body fat, it's really easy to think, I'll start next week, I'll start next month, I'll start in the summer, I'll start in January. Kudos to you for being on this call today. By the way, it's a really powerful bit where you like anchor them and compliment them on being on the call and wanting to make a decision today. It's sort of Jedi mind stuff that works there. So it's like, kudos to you for, taking action and being on this call today and looking to move forwards with this. So I want to hear it like in your words, why is this important for you to start fixing now? The reason that we do this is I'm all about trying to do a collaborative close. I'm not a fan of objection handling. I don't want to run through a call, get all the way to the end, and then have them hit me with 101 objections. Philosophy in sales is to do all of the work here so that I cover off any objections, that we've sort of already dealt with it, handled it before we even get to the investment phase. So that's really the crux of why the system works really well, because you don't have to do any awkward kind of objection handling. You'll ask them, why is this important now? And they'll say, do you know what? I keep putting it off. I've actually been thinking about this for probably 6 weeks now, but then I just saw this specific result of yours that popped up like a few days ago, and I just need to get it sorted. It could be that, it could be a health scare, it could be, I've just become single, whatever it may be. You want to anchor in on that, and that gives you a little bit of leverage for later on in the call if they do try and sort of like delay this thing. It's like, hey, listen, like, do you remember when we spoke at the beginning of the call, you said it was really important to you to do it now because of X? So this is why I would try and gather this information quite quickly. The second part of it is once you've got that and you're like, okay, I got it, makes sense. Second question is, let's just call a spade a spade. Across social media, there are hundreds, thousands of online fitness coaches. So kind of what stood out with my content, if you don't mind me asking? How come you've chosen to jump on a call myself? And then at that point, that's where they'll go, you know what? I read this post of yours where you were talking through your backstory, and that you also really struggled with sort of like eating behaviors and confidence and so on. There was something about it that just really seemed quite genuine. They're basically positioning you as like the ideal coach for them. And again, just loading you with ammunition. So the way that you ask this, of course, isn't as blunt as why now, why me? It's, listen, most people put these things off. Kudos to you. You've taken the time out of your day to jump on this call now. Why is it important for us to start making some progress on this thing like now, today versus 3 months from now, like most people? And then the second way that you ask it, of course, is, hey, there's hundreds of coaches out there. Kind of what stood out, if you don't mind me asking, about my content. So we're looking here for them to give you the ammunition as to why they should move forwards and why specifically with you. Next up, the discovery phase that we referenced. So this should be anywhere around probably 10 to 15 minutes long. I'm giving like loose parameters because there will be certain clients that you do need to go a little bit deeper on and so on. There are others that are a bit tougher to get into. They don't open up so much. So use these as guides, but roughly speaking, probably 10 to 15 minutes on this stage is pretty good. Now, there are two ways that you can approach a discovery phase on sales calls. You can either start with what's called problems first or goals first. So starting with problems first means that they're really, really sort of like problem and solution aware. They know exactly where they want to go, and you just jump straight in with like, hit me. Why are we on this call? What's broken? I personally am not a fan of that approach especially for like body composition type clients. And I prefer taking a goals first approach. And I always break it down to 2. Really appreciate you telling me about that. And that's obviously the why now, why me. Let's start planning this thing out. So what is it you want to achieve? And I like to break this down into two phases. So run me through like short term. And I guess that could be sort of 2 to 4 months, like 90 days or so. So run me through, in an ideal world, what would you have achieved around 90 days from so? And then they'll give you, that answer. I would always try and push them. So if they use language like, well, I just want to get a bit fitter, I just wanted this, just wanted that, I would just nudge them and try and quantify it and just go, okay, how are we going to know once you've hit that? What is that number? What's fitter? Is it reducing your blood pressure? Is it reducing run times? If it's body composition, it's like, I just want to feel better, look better. Okay, like, can you think of a time when you did feel really good? Was there a sort of dress size that you were at? Is there a body weight that you just kind of like is where you feel your best? And they'll give you that number and it's like, okay, great. That's what we're going to work towards. So that's short term. The next thing that I would start asking would be probing like, why? If you do ask the short term question and straight away they're like, I want to drop 6 kilos. You could be like, amazing. Kudos to you for being really clear on that. Why 6? Like, you seem pretty set on it. Like, it's quite a specific number. So why the 6 kilos? And then they'll elaborate on that. The next thing that I would do is I would go, great. So we've got the short-term goal, where we're going to drop X amount of kilos. So let's zoom out for a second. I want you to now start thinking like 12, 18 months down the line. What's the long-term goal? Sure, losing 5, 6 kilos in the short term is great, but long-term, how do you want to feel? What are those big goals that you've got? Any big sort of fitness type milestone goals, They might say, do you know what? I've always said that I would love to run a marathon one day. I'd love to enter a higher rocks. I want to be around for my kids longer. Like, I want this. If they're really overweight and it's a guy perhaps, and right now his goal is to drop body fat, maybe longer term, it's like, I want to look like a Men's Health cover model. I would start pushing towards those. And again, I'll be asking like, amazing. Listen, I'm on board with that. Give me a bit more though. Why? Like, what's going to change for you when you start hitting that? So I'd start digging into it. So we want to hype them up. We want to get them excited about their short and long-term goals and get them really like feeling it and backing them up that this is possible. If you have any case studies, you can reference these. Like, actually, you know what? I had my client Sarah, she's actually just dropped her 6th kilo and she's done it in 6 months. We literally dropped like a kilo a month every month, 6 months, something like that. So try and back it up. Now what we want to do is we want to, what I call, stretch the gap. So we've sort of, brought them up here on a high, and now we want to bring them back down to reality. So at this stage, I would then go, here's where we want to get to. Run me through, like, where are things at for you right now? What sort of body weight are we at? How's this looking? Run me through your daily schedule. And you start building up a picture and highlighting, like, grade your current energy levels. How on it do you feel that you are with your own nutrition and so on? So you want to start highlighting current situation and getting them to draw kind of how that looks. From there, I'd also move into what they've tried previously. So like, hey, it sounds to me like this isn't the first time you've tried dropping body fat. Run me through it. Like, have you tried anything else before? Yeah, I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried this. And again, this is giving you ethical ammunition for later on in the call. If somebody's like, oh, I just don't know. It's like, listen, you told me how desperate you are to achieve this. You want to be around longer for your kids. You want to be able to go on a holiday and comfortably take your top off. You don't want to keep having photos taken, holding a bag in front of your midsection. You've tried this, you've tried this, you've tried this. Don't you think it's time that you tried something else? So we would ask, what they've tried previously. What did they like about it? What didn't they like? So that you can make sure that you navigate around that when we come to sort of running through the model, the method, the pitch, and so on. Now, the final thing that I always try and do is, as I mentioned earlier, I would always try and deal with any objections earlier on in the call. So once you've started going through that, I would then run through what I call roadblocks. So at this point, I would transition it to, okay, sounds really good so far. So we want to get you to here. Right now, this is the current situation. You're doing X, Y, Z. Couple of things. So you mentioned that you work full-time in X. I'm going to level with you. There's going to need to be some time, that we put into this thing. Is that going to be an issue for you? I envision that we're probably going to need to do maybe 3 gym sessions a week. We're looking at about 45 minutes per session. Can you give me around 2.5 hours per week for that? So we start crossing off this without them being able to bring it up at the end of the call of like, I just don't know if I've got the time to commit. We bring it up. So you'd mentioned that you've got a holiday in 6 weeks with your partner. Like, remind me, what's her name? What's his name? Whatever. They tell you that. Awesome. So do they know that we're on this call? Yeah. What's their gut feeling? Have they said anything, words of encouragement? Yeah. It's actually my partner that's been the one that's found your Instagram account and sent it to me. My partner was the one that actually found it, and she keeps telling me, like, you need to jump on a call with this person. So again, we start to remove that partner objection. The finances one is one that I will use sparingly, and it's only if, somebody mentions that, well, the reason now that I'm doing this is because, I've just been made redundant, those sorts of things. Or if they drop anything in here about, like, during the discovery phase, what you've tried previously. Oh, I did this and it was really expensive. Or, oh, I just struggle eating really well because it's so expensive. At this point, I would mention the finances, and I would just, listen, obviously we're going to start like putting a nutrition plan together in place and so on. I just want to make sure that, like, budget wise, that's not going to be an issue. If we have to like invest in a couple of supplements to help fast track things, how's that? And if I don't do a huge amount of digging, and I tend to probably only use that on like 1 in every 10 calls. But if I do get any red flags that affordability may be an issue, I'll try and just subtly address it. So far we've done rapport. We've asked why now, why me? So we've got some positioning, and we know why this is an important and urgent to them. And now we've gone through discovery, and ultimately we've stretched the gap. We know where they want to get to, where they're at right now, whether they have any roadblocks, what they've tried in the past, and so on. So we've now got a solid picture. So at this point, we're going to now go into the model. So this bit should take 10 to 15 minutes. How I would transition into this is I would be like, okay, got it. So right now you're here, you want to get to here, you've got the time that you can put into to commit into this, and you've tried X, Y, Z so far. Gonna be honest with you, feels like a home run. This is what I do day in, day out. This is my bread and butter. You really are my ideal client that I enjoy working with. Before I move on, anything else that will be useful for me to know at all? Or do you think we've covered it all? 9 times out of 10, they'll say, I think I've covered it all. Great. I do things a little bit differently to other coaches. Would you like me to run you through kind of my methodology and the reason ultimately that I feel that we're going to be able to crush this thing and knock it out the park? And at that point, they'll usually say, yeah, sure, great, cool. So here's where I would come up with a model. Now, this is something that you're going to, of course, have to go and put some thought into outside of this call, but this really is what will separate you compared to most coaches. At this point, go from discovery phase to should I run you through how this works? The person says yes, and then it's straight into like, awesome, you're going to get access to my app, you're going to get this, you're going to get this. Instead, we want to separate ourselves with a philosophy and a model. This here really is the reason that I get the results that I do. So I believe that there are 3 key areas to getting a phenomenal result. So I don't want to put words in your mouth for you being a coach watching this, but for example, pillar 1 could be nutrition. Pillar 2 could be training, and then pillar 3 could be mindset. Ultimately, I want you to have a think about what your 3 biggest levers are to getting a client a result. But let's say it's these 3 things. So I would say, this is perhaps where I approach this a little differently to other coaches, and certainly, completely different to what you've tried in the past. So number 1 is we're going to make sure that we nail down your nutrition from X, Y, Z. We're going to cover off and make sure that you get enough protein in. We're going to make sure that you know exactly how to circumvent social situations. I don't believe in set meal plans. I also don't believe in completely flexible dieting. I use this unique hybrid tracking approach that has been a game changer for my clients. So this is part 1. Part 2 is training. So I don't think you should be changing your routine every 4 weeks. That's what most coaches do. It's what most clients follow. And it's the reason that they get stuck. They never make any real strength progress and gains. Every time they start to get stronger on an exercise, their whole routine is upended and they're back to having to relearn the movement patterns and so on. So we're going to focus on progressive overload. And when we do that, that allows you to end up burning more calories because you maintain a bit more muscle mass, you build shape much faster. It's a complete game changer. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how we're going to do that step by step. And the third thing that most people overlook is mindset. Following a simple calorie deficit and getting to the gym 2-3 times a week is really kind of easy. So if it's so easy, why are people not getting results? Why are people in the same situation that you're in where they're having to try this approach, that approach, this approach? It comes down to mindset. It's how do we fit this into your calendar to make it really easy? How do we get you to adhere to it? When things don't work, how do we get back on track super quickly? So you run through this, whatever your philosophy is. Obviously, I've just made this up on the spot. Now, if you want to go like ninja level, then you can also grade them a little bit. So what you can do here is you could almost use this as a bit of an audit. Like if we were to go red, green, amber, how confident are you right now that you know exactly how to get protein in every single meal? That if you were to go out, you'd know how to sort of navigate that social situation and so on. Like give me like green would be, yep, I'm on it. I understand nutrition inside out. Yellow would be, I'm kind of here. Red would be, I got no clue. Like, I just need you to tell me what to eat. And then a client comes in and on this call, they say red. Training, where are we at with progressive overload, with knowing, the inside out of a gym, the difference between a barbell and a dumbbell and set progression and rep progression and so on. And they're like, kind of, I do some classes every so often. And then here, this might be a red as well. So at this point, I would say to them, okay, does this look accurate to you? That we've kind of got nutrition and mindset is an adherence ultimately. The first 2 things we want to tackle. From a training angle, you're okay, but we can obviously level a few things up there. Does that sound good? They'll say yes. Perfect. Any questions on that at all? No. Great. Can you see why my clients get results consistently and predictably? Because I've taken the time to reverse engineer this and build this out for them. Yes. Amazing. So that's the model bit. Now from there, we move into deliverables. So at this stage, and this is where, as I said, most coaches will, on a sales call, they won't do the model. They'll go straight to deliverables and they'll spend forever talking about this bloody custom app and so on. Prospect is going to hear 100 times that day if they have other sales calls. So instead, the deliverables wants to be, great, so you understand the model and the philosophy that I'm going to work us through. Would you like me to quickly run through how this is delivered to you? So we play it down and they're like, yeah, that would be great. Cool. This will take 5 to 10 minutes. Whenever we run through now the deliverables, and deliverables are basically the features. So this is, the check-in process. It is the training library or the app. It's, the training plan, that sort of thing, community if you have it. You basically want to pick 3 to 5 of them at most. You want to try and pick the ones that are relatable to them. You want to go from most important to least important, and you want to always give something and then back it up with a so that. A mistake I see is people rattling off these features, not giving any benefits to them, and then also saving the most important, which is the weekly check-in, until the end. So we want to start with something that's like, so first off, this is really important. This is really the crux of my coaching, is you and I are going to have a personalized check-in every single week. So every 7 days without fail, you and I are going to have a catch up, and we're going to look at what's worked well over the last 7 days, what's happening in terms of strength progressions, body weight, and so on. And then I'm going to list out the 1 to 3 action steps that we need to take over the next 7 days so that I can hold you accountable throughout this whole period. If you think back to when you mentioned that you followed X and it didn't work, it's because this accountability piece was missing. So I'm going to hold you accountable, and we're going to make proactive changes every single week to keep you moving forwards. Next up, I know that sometimes, when you go to a gym, you can look around, you don't really know what piece of equipment you should start on, how should an exercise be done correctly. I've actually built a custom app that has all of the exercises in there. You tap on a button, it's going to show you exactly how I demonstrate it so that you don't get into the gym and you're really overwhelmed. And then the third thing that's really important is you mentioned that nutrition's kind of the main thing that overwhelms you. So I referenced a second ago the model that I have this thing called the hybrid nutrition tracker. That's basically kind of combining a set meal plan with flexible dieting. It's the perfect sweet spot. So I think that's going to be really useful for you so that you're not having to just eat the same thing every day, but also you're not sat there trying to scan barcodes on every single thing you put in your mouth. So you run through those. It's super simple. Then we move into the temp check. This is one of the most important parts of the call that, again, I don't see enough coaches do. This should literally take you 2 to 3 minutes. And this is where you would go, got it. So I've run you through everything. So you know how the model works. You know what's delivered to you. Hit me with any questions that you've got. I don't think I've got any questions. Okay, cool. How does it all sound so far? Sound good? Yep, great. Okay, question for you. I want you to give me a scale of 1 to 10. 1 would be that this last 28 minutes of this call has been a complete waste of your life and your finger is like hovering over the leave meeting button. 10 would be, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been looking for. Hit me with that. So at that point, they'll give you a number. Now, if it's an 8, 9, 10, we're gonna push forwards. We're gonna go into the investment phase. If they give you a 6 or a 7, or they're reluctant to give you a number, then we're going to cycle back around and we're going to ask them, why aren't they at a solid 8, 9, 10? So if they're reluctant to give a number and they're like, I don't know, yeah, it sounds good. I'd be like, okay, like quantify it. Like, where's good? Is good like a 6? Is it a 9? So you want to push them on that. If they eventually give you like a 6 or a 7, then I would just go, okay, like curious. You're a 6 at the moment. I'm going to be honest, you're my perfect client for this. What would take you from a 6 to an 8 or a 9? Like what's holding you back? What's missing from this? And the reason that this is really important is, again, if you think of what I mentioned earlier, I'm all about ever having to do the whole objection handling. I'm trying to use this to lead into the investment phase to be as smooth as possible. So if we skip all this and we go to the investment and somebody's just like, I'll have to think about it, sounds okay, it's because something isn't in alignment. Something is holding them back, something is not filling them with confidence. So when we run the temp check, that's basically them letting us know that something isn't quite feeling right. What would take you from a 6 to an 8? What's the reason that you're not currently at a strong, 8 or 9? They might then say, you know what, it's just that I really thought I was going to get some help with like supplementation, for example. And then you're like, oh, no problem. Actually, I'm a massive supplement nerd. I'm going to start you off probably on the classics, which I consider to be like omega-3 fish oils and D3. And then we're going to kind of see as we go. And then we see if sleep's an issue or if gut health's an issue. And then we can weave certain things in there. So typically my point to this is that if they temp check lower than like a 7 or lower, it's usually because something is standing out that feels that they are missing in the service, or that they're not going to be able to do, or, I only get to speak to you once a week. I was hoping it would be a bit more frequent than just a once a week check-in. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention, we actually have touch points throughout the week. So we're going to have one formal check-in, but every 2 to 3 days, we're going to be on WhatsApp throughout. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. You're going to hear from me 3 or 4 times a week. It's basically, you got a full-time coach in your back pocket. So we use that so then they get that sigh of relief and they're like, and you go, okay, so knowing that now how do you feel about the coaching process? Oh yeah, 10. Would you like me to run you through how the investment side of things works? So 5 to 10 minutes on here, start with permission. They say yes. Awesome, great. So let's skip ahead a second. Let's say that we are a good fit and we end up moving forwards. Here's what happens next. So what we're doing is, instead of going straight to the price, we're now letting them know that first things first, once you're on board, you're going to be sent an application form immediately for you to fill in with all your details and so on. I'm also going to give you access to our resource library and get you onboarded onto the app. From there, we're going to jump on an onboarding call within the next 2 to 4 days. And that's where we're going to really lay out the roadmap, the plan of action. And we're off to the races. Sound cool? Yeah, great. So I would always do a quick bit of permission, then into next steps. And now when it comes to the price drop, all mentors have different thoughts over this, whether it should be paid in full, recurring, how you pitch it, and so on. I like to use the this or that approach. So I will I'll have two options. It might be paid in full or installments. It could be premium versus classic. But I would always have two options to present, no more than two. And at that point I would go, awesome. So just a quick recap, you're going to get access to X, Y, Z, yada, yada, yada. And then how this works is that we've got two options. Option one is A, option two is B. Let them, sit on it for a second. Don't jump in and talk yourself out of the sale. And then they'll typically go, actually, I think option B is best for me. Sounds good to me. And the final question is, shall we get you onboarded so that we can make some progress on getting you towards this 6K weight loss? Would you like me to get you onboarded now? Yeah, let's go. Great. You should have your payment links and stuff loaded so they're ready to go. Share your screen, run them through it. Never say like, are you happy if I take payment or anything like that? Just use like the terms investment and then shall I get you onboarded now so that you get immediate access and we can start chasing down that first 6 kilo drop, and then you share your screen and go from there. That there is the 7-step flow that I would really encourage you to start following if right now your closing rate isn't where you would like it to be. If you feel really sleazy on sales calls, following this just feels effortless. It means that you don't have to try and wrestle with them at the end of the call. You don't have to try and deal with loads of objections. You've dealt with it at each phase of the call so that by the time you get to the investment phase, all of the issues that could have cropped up have been dealt with, and you've closed all the loops on those and get straight into the onboarding process. So I hope this is useful. I'm going to link a video below that's going to take you to a DM training on Instagram. So if you are struggling to get the calls booked, then you know exactly what to do. Go to the link below. That will show you how to get more calls on the calendar, and then obviously follow this training, and this is going to show you exactly how to close clients without feeling awkward, sleazy, desperate, and so on.